So switching gears. So next up, I want to welcome Shailesh Shukla from Google Cloud. Shailesh is the Vice President and Product Management and General Manager for Networking at Google Cloud. He's responsible for Google Cloud Networking and network infrastructure products that power Google services such as YouTube and Search. So just remember, you can still send in questions for Shailesh, and we'll come back around after Shailesh's talk as well. So Shailesh, thanks for being here, and please take it away.
Thank you, Timon. Hi there. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening as you are watching this keynote based on whichever time zone you're in. So first of all, thank you, Timon, and thank you, Guru, for inviting us. And it's an honor for me to be able to be a part of this session. At Google Cloud, we are very supportive of ONF and the good work that you are doing. Today's focus is the edge. So unleashing innovation at the edge. Let me just give you kind of our perspective right away, and then we'll go into the details. So our perspective and view is very straightforward. We believe that by combining an open approach, involving all relevant players in the ecosystem, such as telecom operators, enterprises, ISVs, and public cloud players, and focusing on very specific pain points and use cases in verticals will actually create a win-win for all and unlock the true kind of superior economics of the edge or at the edge, right? So that's our kind of very straightforward perspective. So key points, again, is around openness, involving all players in the ecosystem so that we create a win-win, and focusing on very specific pain points. If we do those three correctly, we will be able to unlock all the superior economics at the edge. That's kind of the way that we think of things. So what I'd like to do is today, I'll cover first a little bit about the edge opportunity, talk about kind of our vision for the edge and how, in fact, as Guru had pointed out in his presentation, it's similar to kind of the concept of Android. So I'd like you to sort of keep that in your mind as I go through this. And then we'll talk a little bit about what assets and deployment models that we are thinking of, what edge assets from Google that we bring to the table. I'll talk about the ISV ecosystem. You'll also note that those of you who have had a chance to see, today we announced a very significant number of ISV partners. About 30 of those, we are working on a large number of use cases for specific verticals. So we are very pleased about the support that we are getting from the overall ecosystem. I'll share some examples of edge use cases. Will not spend too much time on that because Guru already shared a few of those. And then I'll close by talking about our partnership, a close partnership with ONF. Okay, so let me go through this. And apologies if I run out of time and if we don't have an opportunity to do a serious Q&A. I'll always be available, through email or through Timon to be able to answer any questions that you might have. Okay. So first, the edge opportunity. We all realize, and that's why we are here, that edge represents a massive opportunity, not just from a sizing perspective, but also from a strategic perspective, given the landscape of future applications. And this is relevant for public cloud players, for telecom service providers, and also for enterprises who will be able to take advantage of the advanced functionalities that edge deployments will allow, particularly with regard to low latency, significantly higher reliability, machine-to-machine connectivity, local processing and compute, and in fact, distributing the compute to where it is most relevant. I'll talk a little bit about that. We don't need to go through kind of the specific details here, but the key point is that market size is large, growing fast, and represents an opportunity for telecom operators, for public cloud players, for ISVs, and of course, it solves pain points for the enterprises, so it's an opportunity for them. So let's keep moving. First point that comes up is, hey, wait a minute, edge. We've been talking about edge for 20 years. What exactly is edge? Define it for me, please. So here's a view of the edge from our perspective, right? In general, you can think about the edge as kind of an extension of the data center and cloud technologies getting distributed closer and closer to the end customer's location, right? And the idea there is to be able to manage, store, process data and applications where the specific kind of latency requirements are, where the data is, right? As close to getting the right workload at the right place, regardless of what you define it as edge or not, is kind of the key point here. So specifically, let's look at telco edge. As the network becomes a lot more distributed, carriers can leverage their established presence, all the way back to their backbone, of course, but in the central office, in the far edge, all the way to the RAN space, right? Um, Public cloud players such as Google Cloud, have massive presence globally with data centers, right, which in regions, the points of presence, as well as it turns out, and I'll share with you a chart that shows some of the edge sites that Google Cloud in particular has deployed deep inside of ISP networks, which can also be leveraged as a place for doing some of the distributed compute required for edge, right? And finally, customer edge, right? Ultimately, you can think about the thousands of branch offices or the retail stores or billions of IoTs and connected devices that Guru was mentioning. These are all part of what I would call as a enterprise customer edge. So in other words, if you were to summarize, the definition of edge is in the eye of the beholder. Edge is everywhere. The way that we have to think about edge is, what is the right place to have a workload run in order to facilitate delivering the solution to a particular pain point, and how all of these edges can work together cooperatively to solve that business problem. For example, as Guru was mentioning, if you have an AI/ML solution or a use case, it's better to run the training in the cloud and the inference as close to the edge as possible. And hence, if you look at the next chart, this is the way that we look at how you place a particular workload based on your requirements. So at the bottom, you'll see latency from low to high and how much data gets generated, high to low, right? So as you move from kind of the left side, which is more closer to the customer edge, all the way on the right side where the public cloud region or the data center is located, public cloud data centers, right? You can think about latency sort of decreasing as you move towards the left, right? As you move closer to the endpoint. And data generation typically is high, closer to where the data is actually being generated. Then you can aggregate data, extract out the right elements and send those to the cloud for processing, right? As an example, the training of the algorithms can occur in the cloud, and the inference can occur closer to the end user. So the way that we look at where to deploy, what to deploy, whether to drive kind of private connectivity, whether to use MEC platforms that get deployed inside a telco cloud, or whether to actually run the workload in the public cloud itself, it all depends on the nature of the use case and what you want to accomplish, how fast. So this is the way that we are thinking about the whole sort of mapping of the different use cases to specific edge locations that I described earlier, right? So in fact, at Google Cloud, we have recently announced our GMEC, or Global Mobile Edge Cloud Strategy, which delivers kind of an open cloud platform with a marketplace of 5G and LTE solutions, which are built jointly with telecom service providers, enterprises, and ISVs to solve specific use cases. I'll talk more about that a little later. But before we jump into the details there, I want to share with you why we believe openness is very important and how we can create a common control plane across all of these kind of edge locations that we have talked about. So let's switch gears and look at kind of how Google has always approached openness, right, and innovation. If you look at the last, say, decade or so, a lot of the elements that you see on this slide, whether it's Android, whether it's Kubernetes, whether it's TensorFlow, these are all technologies that Google built internally first, then opened it up for broader ecosystem to use, which has resulted in massive innovation in multiple areas. Just as an example, Kubernetes now is being used by more than 50% of all Fortune 100 companies, invented by Google, open source by Google, supported by Google. In fact, even today, right, after having open sourced it for a while, Google is contributing to about 40% of the commits to the Kubernetes community, right, and CNCF. So we are very proud of that. Now, let's do a next level and focus on Android. So more than a decade ago, when iOS and iPhone launched, right, they gave birth to a kind of a highly coveted smartphone platform. But at that point in time, and it was proprietary and closed, right? So telecom operators, for example, or device manufacturers were not able to leverage and be and able to participate in any meaningful way in reaping the rewards. That's where Google created the Android operating system, right, in 2007, and it fundamentally reshaped the industry. Why? Because what it did was it created a common operating system layer underneath which, if a large number of devices, whether from Google, from telecom operators, third parties, right, and so on, it unleashed the innovation in terms of devices and created an abstraction layer essentially on top of it. And then through the open interfaces on top, it created and enabled the creation of a large number of apps, whether they were Google apps, telco apps, third-party apps, and so on. And that essentially opened up the entire ecosystem so that monetization could occur in multiple ways and many players could have a win-win approach to the market. This is precisely the approach that we are taking now with the overall telecom solutions, but very specifically to this context of today, to the edge platform, right? So our view is the following. Have an open application platform that in this case we call as, we are leveraging Anthos for telecom, which was built upon Kubernetes, right? We are extending that same experience to hybrid environments that span both public as well as different kinds of public clouds, right, multi-clouds, all the way to the on-prem environments, right, whether it's Google managed, whether it's telecom managed, enterprise managed, it doesn't matter, right? And the idea is that it becomes an open application platform. And this we have announced as our GMEC platform in March of this year, 2020. So please do take a look at those announcements. Now, underneath that, if you will, southbound, if you will, is the edge infrastructure. And when we say edge infrastructure, again, we are talking about Google Edge, Telco Edge, Customer Edge, other clouds, right? So all of these become a part of the broader edge infrastructure with a common control plane through our GMEC platform. And then once again, on the northbound side, we open up the capability for a large number of independent software vendors, other participants in the ecosystem to create solutions and to solve for specific use cases. So as I mentioned earlier, just this morning, we unveiled about 30 kind of edge / MEC vertical industry ISV partners that will create solutions across industrial and IoT, manufacturing, media and entertainment, retail, and horizontal, and so on. And our approach is create a win-win, right? And I'll talk a little bit about kind of the deployment models in a second. And you'll see that the approach we are taking is not necessarily own the stack completely. The idea is not to necessarily to roll in a complete solution, but open up the interfaces, have a common control plane, and let, if you will, 1,000 flowers bloom on top of that. That is the approach that we are taking. And the infrastructure capability that we bring to this edge environment is the following. Of course, you're aware of all the 24 cloud regions, plus we have announced kind of 9 regions already. We today have 73 zones, 144 edge pops, 96 CDN locations, and a large number of dedicated and interconnect locations and so on. A huge amount of kind of subsea cable investments. And in addition to all of this, what you see there as blue dots, these blue dots represent Google Cloud's investment working with ISPs to have caching locations deep inside their networks, right? Particularly focused initially on YouTube, right? And those become a platform for edge compute going forward, working in conjunction with the ISP or the telecom carrier. So it becomes a very powerful way to immediately deploy a number of kind of edge use cases in a very rapid fashion across the globe. And this is a very powerful, both a differentiator for Google Cloud, but also more importantly, a capability that can be leveraged in order to very quickly bring to market large numbers of use cases globally. So we are very proud of that, and looking forward to seeing that getting deployed over the next few years. The thing that I also want to mention was the approach that we are taking with regard to deployment models. And again, here, our view is that it's very important to have a flexibility of multiple deployment models for our edge stack, with Anthos as kind of the common control plane, right? Depending on, and I'll give you a double click on Anthos in a second, but as part of our GMEC strategy, right, and our GMEC platform, Anthos is being a core component. The deployment model can be very, very flexible. I'll give you a walkthrough from the left to right in terms of the different options A, B, C, and then I'll talk about kind of the overall cloud. So option A is a typical kind of software model where the edge is deployed at the customer location, so an enterprise location or even a telco location, right? And the hardware is owned and managed by either the enterprise or the telco. So that's kind of the first model. The second model, if let us say an enterprise or a telco says, hey, I'd like this to be deployed at my location, but I don't really want to kind of manage it. So Google, can you please manage the stack for us? So here, again, by leveraging large amounts of kind of innovations that we have implemented already in extremely large distributed kind of network management around sort of managing the fleet of our locations, we can leverage that fleet management technology coupled with Anthos as the control plane, so that a Google managed hardware is a possibility for a telco or an enterprise edge deployment. So that's option kind of B. And then option C is the telecom operator says, hey, this is great, but we'd love to leverage the 3,000 plus Google Cloud edges that exist. Can be deployed on that. So that's another way in which the deployment model can occur. So these are three examples. Now, keep in mind that the cloud portion of it, right? So the actual cloud will of course have a lot of the analytics, the AI/ML, CI/CD operations and management capability, right? And a common control plane leveraging Anthos for deployment of the specific workloads or capabilities, all the way to an enterprise edge, a telco edge, a Google edge in a Google managed fashion or in an enterprise/telco managed fashion. That's kind of the goal here. So retain the flexibility of multiple deployment and ownership models is one of the approaches that we are taking, which we find the industry is really resonating with. We don't have kind of a opportunity to go into depth around Anthos, but I encourage you to look at Google Cloud's kind of website and some of the publicly available information that we have around how Anthos truly operates and provides kind of a unified and consistent programming, deployment, and operational model for different kinds of workloads, whether they are on-prem, whether it's in a telco edge, whether it's in a multiple clouds or in Google Cloud, right? So I encourage you to take a look at that. Okay. I think I'm going to skip this, but the point again here is that it's all about choice and flexibility, right? Choice of environment, choice of a deployment model, flexibility based on your specific use case. That is how we are looking at things. Okay? And as I mentioned earlier, this morning we made the announcement of the Google Edge ecosystem, which mentions more than 30 ISV partners who are readying a catalog of about 200 5G and edge applications. And these partners sort of span, retail, manufacturing, IoT, media, entertainment, and so on, right? And some which are much more kind of horizontal. They're providing and enabling the horizontal elements. So it's a testament to the fact that there is a lot of innovation in the ecosystem that is waiting to be unleashed. And we are very, very pleased to be able to work with this ecosystem. Okay. Next. I think that I kind of spoke about this, but as we create these edge solutions, our goal is to have a kind of a win-win scenario where the telecom operator, the ISV, the enterprise, and Google Cloud all work together to solve specific use cases such as smart retail, connected factories, remote healthcare, cloud gaming that's powered by 5G. And I'll show you in a minute kind of our view that we have to create and offer essentially a catalog of different use cases across specific verticals that can be consumed by an enterprise. So this is the catalog, right? We don't have to go through this, but as you can see, our goal is to go across, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, transportation, media, and other industries have a very specific use case that solves a particular pain point, some of which may require 5G, some of it may be enhanced by 5G but don't require it, right? It can be done through existing, say, 4G LTE deployments, right? And all of them can be augmented by the AI analytics and the open APIs that get provided. There are lots and lots of examples. Again, just in the interest of time, I will not go through it, but there are a few that I just wanted to highlight. Okay, the one to the left is something that's actually getting massive traction in the industry right now, is to use conversational AI to actually improve the way that enterprises talk to their end users, so that you can provide superior customer service on the one side, but have massive kind of cost savings on the other side, right? So this we are very proud of this. This is leveraging a lot of the AI and ML technologies from Google, brought to this very specific use case. Another interesting one, which has a lot of usage in the retail world, is visual search. So you can essentially point a smartphone at a particular object, say in a retail store, and be able to find out all the data around that particular object, where it's available, where in the store it is located, so that the system can actually guide you to that, and at the same time be able to sort of enable a kind of a retail experience for, say, leveraging augmented reality and so on. So these things are available today. In fact, this second one, we actually did work with a major retailer and AT&T, and this is something that we announced in March of this year as well. How do we create a next generation smart retail experience? Then there are other examples which are very relevant to today's environment with regard to using natural language processing to improve health and telemedicine. And then various other examples, some of which Guru was mentioning with regard to leveraging intelligence and ML at the edge for everything from autonomous driving to identifying humans or people, right, to be able to track them from the point of view of creating a safe driving experience and so on. So we are really pleased that the industry is sort of responding to the approach that both Google Cloud is taking, as well as the broader industry is playing. I'll sort of skip through this, and I'll close on our collaboration with ONF. As you can see, over many years, we have been working with organizations such as ONF right, which are focused on open source and opening up the ecosystem. In 2011, we were a co-founding partner of ONF, and at that time collaborated on OpenFlow, and as you know, deployed it at scale in our inter-data center wide area network. Right, this collaboration continued over time, moving into the cord activities, and then as P4 started to kind of gain adoption and momentum in the industry as a programming language for networking, Barefoot Google Cloud collaborated with ONF to create this P4 runtime open source project. So we're very pleased about that. And then in 2018, when ONF announced Stratum, we supported that announcement with the next gen kind of SDN interfaces. And then more recently, we are excited about the Ether work that Guru has described so eloquently in his presentation. And we believe that it does enable kind of bringing together a number of kind of open, disaggregated sort of, capability to 5G LTE platforms for deployment in, for example, in enterprises. And looking forward to continuing to collaborate very closely with ONF to unleash the innovation at the edge. So thank you for this time. And thank you, Guru and Timon, for inviting me. I'll close here and see if we have a couple of minutes for any top of mind questions. Otherwise, as I promised earlier, we should be able to answer any questions that come later on. Back to you, Timon.
Shailesh, thank you. That was terrific and much appreciated. And we do have a couple of questions. I know we're really tight on time, and I know you have a very hard stop.
Yeah.
But I think maybe two questions bubble to the top. One is that you described this infrastructure and the YouTube infrastructure from Google and whatnot. I mean, how would an enterprise go about consuming or deploying an application in that footprint? I mean, sort of working through these new partners you're announcing, or directly with Google or an operator, or how does one go about that?
Clearly, right, those nodes are deployed deep inside an ISP or a carrier's network, right? So it has to be something where Google and the telecom carrier are working closely together to enable a particular use case. So that is the deployment model there. For a very specific point that you're asking for, it will be something that Google and the telecom carrier will work together to find the right use case and get it deployed.
Okay, very good. And then, and lastly, Anthos. So curious about Anthos and compatibility with AWS and Azure. And so, how much is it tied to GCP and how much is it more broadly available?
Well, I think one of the key points about Anthos, and when we launched this in 2018, and we announced GA in 2019, one of the great things about Anthos that it is designed specifically to be a platform for enabling hybrid and multi-cloud. So what that means is Google Cloud, of course. Hybrid means on-prem, and then multi-cloud means many of the public clouds such as AWS and Azure. So you can actually, it allows you to have this psychology that you can create an application once and run it anywhere, right? This is a very powerful, again, back to kind of the metaphor that I've used earlier around Android and now GMAC, right, powered by Anthos. This is what creates a platform for enabling enterprises, service providers to write the application once, have it run anywhere. So specifically to answer your question, our Anthos platform enables running a workload in AWS and in Azure, and still be managed as part of kind of a single deployment model. It's very powerful.
Oh, very good. Well, Shailesh, thank you very much. And I'm aware of your hard stop. So we're right at the bottom of the hour. So, but this has been terrific. From all the presenters, I want to thank everyone. This now concludes our presentations for today.